All right. Hi, everybody. Sade is here to help me. I'm Lori Ghoshal, and Sade is going to help keep me honest and on track. Sade, can you see how many participants we have? We have about 36, correct?
Yes,
All right.
36.
And
37.
we are going to open up the questions and answers, and my esteemed assistant will be monitoring the questions and bring any forward that she thinks the panel should speak to. Otherwise, if it's something she can answer, she will type in the answer that she can. I will put in the questions and answers. No, I will not. I will put in the chat to everyone my email address if you have a question afterwards or want to chat with me for any reason afterwards. So there it is. I am Lori Ghoshal. I work with Marcy in the Career Development Center, and I'm going to introduce all the panelists. And then we will have a series of questions, and we will ask the panelists to respond to these questions. And if there's a burning question from the audience, we will interrupt and ask that as well. So I'm going to go around the group and introduce Gabby Remchandani. Gabby is a sales development representative at Qualtrics, and she graduated in 2020 with a BS with business administration and a concentration in marketing. Welcome, Gabby. And we have Kingston Breton. Kingston. She is an SAP certified consultant. You'll have to tell us what that is with Deloitte. And she graduated from NC State in 2018 with a BS in accounting information systems. And then we have Jessica Nance, and she goes by Jess. And she is a customer success manager at eTel Insights with a BA in business administration and concentration in finance from graduation in 2007. And Jabia Bisana, am I pronouncing it right?
Jabea.
Jabea. She is a business development manager with Cisco and has a BA in international relations and affairs. But I don't know the year you graduated. Can you share that?
Do I have to?
Oh, okay.
No, it's 2014.
2014. Be proud, be proud. And we have Sean Clem, who is a manager for solution consulting at Tipalti. And he has a BS in business administration and a BA in Spanish, graduated in 2011. And Courtney McAllister, she works with mergers and acquisitions and capital markets practice groups with Wyrick Robbins Law Firm. She graduated in 2019 with a law degree from UNC. So welcome, everybody. And I'm going to start with the questions, and we have only 55 more minutes. So we're going to get as far as we can. So this question is for Gabby. Gabby, what is your best piece of advice for reaching your career goals? Like in a minute or less.
Sounds good. Yeah. My best advice is, it sounds cliche, but probably to not doubt yourself. Like before I started working at Qualtrics, I interned at SAS for 2 years. And when I applied, I was like, oh, I'm not going to get it. There's no way. I don't have any experience. But in all honesty, I got it. In all honesty, like, you can do so much more than you think you can do. So like I said, just don't doubt yourself and go after any of your goals, because they are achievable if you try.
I love that. And I'm going to add on to that to say, don't compare yourself with other people. Because if you look at LinkedIn, if you look at Facebook, everybody is showing their best selves on that particular day or whatever it is they post about, but that is not every day. So don't let it intimidate you. And you just go and focus on what you can do. All right, I'm going to ask the same question of Kingston. What is your best piece of advice for reaching your career goals?
I think my best piece of advice and what really helped me is really getting aligned on like an overall purpose, whether that's like a mission statement, a vision board, but having kind of like a North Star of direction makes it easier as soon as you're like bombarded with a lot of opportunities, which you will be as you start your career. It's easier to say yes or no if you have like a purpose to point to.
You're speaking my language. I like your visualization of the North Star. I use vision boards all the time, and that sense of purpose. Excellent. Okay. Now, this question is for Jess. What would you wish you had done differently in college now that you have the experience and knowledge that you have?
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts here. I feel like I wish I had done more in being curious about academics. I don't have a lot of time now in my life. I have 3 kids, I'm a working mom, and I had so much more time in college. I think when I was in college, I didn't think I had a lot of time because I had, I had to study, and I volunteered pretty aggressively with an organization. I had so much to do, but I did the bare minimum with academics. My parents were gonna cut me off if I got below B's. So I did my bare minimum to get A's and B's, but I wish I cared more about what I was learning, because I was learning some incredible stuff, and I was way more focused on like my social life and this volunteer thing I was doing. And I just wish I'd honed in on the things I was learning. And I actually wish I learned to code in college, even though I was in the business or college of management. I'm in software now, and I've been in software for so long now, and I just wish I knew basic coding. So I wish I'd done that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for being open about that. I'm asking the same question of Jabia. What do you wish you had done differently in college?
Similar to Jess, I joined a lot of different organizations, volunteered a lot, and did all kinds of things. But one thing that I regret not doing more is attending sports games. So it's a pretty huge part of NC State, and that's something I really wish I participated more. And I was really focused on, what I can put on my resume, and I wish I had a little bit more fun than just doing all my internships, making sure classes are good. But I feel like I missed out on sport.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, right, to try to scoop up and take with you. It's a magical time in life. And when you get busy in work, you get more and more focused. Okay, thank you. And so this question is for Sean. Sean, how much of what you learned in college do you actually use in your job now?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think when you think about what you learn in school, a lot of it is theoretical and you're learning about things. So I think you use a lot more of your indirect experience. So how to solve problems, how to understand what you're reading, how to really learn. And that's the majority of what I use. The actual coursework, the actual relevant class material, I think I use not a ton of, but really mostly around how to problem solve and how to figure things out and how to communicate with people. Those are the major skills that I think I learned in college that have translated into my career.
Okay, thanks. And Courtney, same question for you. How much of what you learned in college do you use in your job?
I think I would echo what Sean said. Honestly, not a whole lot. I've had to learn a lot on the job, which I can't speak for anyone else, but probably is more common than not, that you have to get a basic skill set from college, whether it's critical thinking, time management, writing skills, and employers a lot of times want to see that. And then you need to have a willingness to learn once you get on the job, because there aren't a whole lot of instances, unless it's a skills-based class, that you're probably going to get exactly what you do for your job. But yeah, that can vary for different jobs, but that's the case for me.
Oh, good. Thank you. We have a question from the audience that I think relates back to this. Are coding and technical skills in non-technical roles like customer success positions still useful?
I'll answer that since I kind of put that out there. So I've worked for 2 software companies, and I've worked directly with our clients and managed like at least $1 million worth of our clients. And when there's technical things that go wrong, I get flustered not knowing what the developers are talking about. And I feel like software is very prevalent these days. And so just to have some basic knowledge to help me translate what the developers are trying to tell our customer, because developers can't talk to customers super well, or clients. It's my job to talk to relay the information. And when I don't have a base knowledge of what the developer is even talking about, it's really hard to explain it to the client well. And so I've actually now kind of taught myself some code and stuff. I wished I had known it when I was, 18 to 22 years old.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to Gabby for a new question. As a recent graduate, how can you make yourself stand out among the competition without going overboard?
This kind of goes back to what Kingston had said earlier about kind of making sure when you're making these decisions throughout college that you have a purpose. And so it kind of aligns with what you want to do. But I think to not go overboard, there's two things. And one of it's learn your boundaries and when to say no to certain extracurricular type things, and learn to kind of keep your focus. And you don't have to do everything to be successful. You have to do enough to make sure that you're still okay. And then also to stay curious. I think that's so important when you're talking to employers and everything, is to show that you don't know everything, but you're curious to learn more.
Great, thank you. Kingston, I will ask the same question of you. How can a recent graduate make themselves stand out among the competition without going overboard?
Absolutely. So Gabby, I will now echo you again with the idea of carrying, one story and your purpose. And you guys just heard my cat play with the printer in the back. I think oftentimes, like some folks have said, we get so focused on building our technical skills and trying to speak to the job that we're kind of afraid to talk about what makes us unique. But if you think about it, all your life experiences, all that you chose in college was for a reason. You thought through this and you thought there was a reason why it was valuable. And to me, I think leveraging that story is what's going to make you stand out, because it makes you unique. And gives more of a context for not only why you're speaking to, your people you work with or managers and anything like that.
Kingston, I love what you said, and I'm going to kind of reiterate it in a different way, because I think it's really important, is everyone is uniquely qualified for the role they want because of what Kingston said. So you are qualified. All you have to do is recognize in what ways you are qualified and then present that to the employer. Okay, so this question is for Jess. Jess, what is your best tip for the transition from college to career?
I will be really honest. It's not an easy transition, or at least it wasn't for me and for many of my friends, my husband, because you're going from if you guys are having a good experience in college, this awesome community, you have people living, you have roommates, you have people just at your fingertips in terms of social interaction. And I know it's different with the pandemic, but imagine non-pandemic times. And so I would say it's going to be it's going to be different. It's going to be really different. So pay attention to your mental health, do things that are good for your mental health. It's hard to go from college to having to work a 9-to-5. So establish routine. I had a lot of friends who didn't have jobs before me. When I graduated, I think the oldest one on here, it was really close to the housing market crash. And so jobs were harder to come by. I was really fortunate and had a job the week after I graduated, but a lot of my friends didn't. So they're still living in this college life world. I'm having to do this 9-to-5. I have to go to bed on time and not 1 a.m. So I would say the biggest thing is balancing kind of your college life and this new 9-to-5 life with good routines, good sleep, pay attention to your mental health, do things that are healthy for you. And that will be an easier transition.
Great, thank you. Good advice. And Jabea, would you please also answer the question, what is your best tip from transition from college to career?
Yes, a really good question. And I definitely agree with Jess. A lot of what she said is very true. And transitioning from college to career is very scary. I feel like even though I've been working like 7 years now, I still feel like I'm trying to adjust and trying to get taken seriously. So my best advice is to, even though you're nervous and you're scared of making mistakes, just don't be afraid to make any mistake. And just, if you're scared to do something, do it afraid. It's okay to do it nervously. And you are bound to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from it, and people are going to see that even though you're the new person or the young person, you're going to experience imposter syndrome, feeling like you're not good enough to be here, or you feel like you're so young and everybody around you has their PhD, masters, and so technical, but you just got to keep going, go out of your comfort zone. And people are going to notice, and even though you're going to be super young and new, use that to your advantage. People know that you're very fresh, so you can probably absorb a lot of things. So I'm always the youngest person. I'm almost 30, but within my team, I'm still the youngest, and it's never going to go away. But so just to sum it up, I would say don't be afraid to make mistakes. Use your newness and freshness to your advantage. Like, the people that you're going to be working with have been working for a very long time, and you're still fresh and new and sparkly, and you have so much energy. So use it to your advantage.
I love that you're sparkly. So I was always the youngest person in the room too, until when I wasn't anymore. So there are benefits on being on both sides of the continuum, and everybody brings value to the table. So you're right, picking up the value that you bring and putting that forward is the way to handle it. I'm going to stop for a moment. I think Sade has a question that is coming from the audience. Sade, would you like to tell us what that question is? And this will be for anybody.
Yeah, so this one's gaining a lot of traction. And the question is, what would you recommend doing to obtain your first internship?
I
can take that if no one else. Oh, good, Jabea.
Sure. So I worked really hard to get as many internships as I could, but the easiest way really is to have informational interviews. So it's kind of the opposite of going on an interview. So if you are interested in a company, find somebody there on LinkedIn, or connect with Marcy or someone like a professor or something if they know somebody in that specific company that you want to intern for. And then connect with them on LinkedIn and then ask them, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time? I want to know about what you do. Tell me about your company. You'll find out that when you reach out to people and just ask them what they do, they're more than willing to talk about themselves. A lot of people love talking about their career, like what they do, about their company. And that's actually how I got my very first job. Is I had messaged my now mentor for a really long time to just meet up with her for 30 minutes. And then fast forward 3 months later, she emailed me asking if I wanted an internship.
Wow.
And it was paid. So just don't be afraid to reach out to people. LinkedIn is definitely the place.
Thank you. Sean, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, just to build on that a little bit, I think it's really important to do that, and it's really important to do that frequently. So not just reaching out to like 1, 2, or 3 people, try to reach out to as many people as you can. Like Jabea mentioned, people love to talk about themselves. And so having that curiosity and having that kind of desire and willingness to put yourself out there, I think is really important. So don't be afraid to do it, and then cast a wide net, right? Because you don't really know what you're going to do or where you're going to end up or what you want to do. There's so many roles and so many positions and so many companies out there that probably right now, as you're in college, you don't even know they exist. And they could be something that you're really interested in, really cool. So I would just say to do that across a wide net, leverage your network, and just don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to our questions. Courtney, this question is for you. How do you respond to someone when they ask, what do you want to do, and you're not sure? For example, what if you just want a well-paying job and you're flexible in what you're going to do? How do you respond without sounding desperate or unprepared?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because I think you can easily frame that by just frame it as thinking that you have an open mind. Because for me personally, I found it was a lot easier when I was going into the job search. I initially thought I knew what I wanted to do, and then I switched up to a more open-minded mindset, and it was a lot better, because the reality is you probably don't fully know exactly what you want to do until you start working or get into the field, because you just don't know what all is out there. And so I think just framing it as, oh, I'm interested in a few different things, and kind of list those, and then just say, but I'm really open-minded, and maybe even saying, I value a good work-life balance, or something like that that aligns with your values. But I think there's a way like that you can put in, keep it pretty open-ended.
I like that. Being open-minded. I'm willing to start at the bottom, whatever. Sean, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would totally agree with what Courtney said. I also think it's important to recognize that your first job and your first few jobs may not be your dream job. But it's equally important, I think, to understand what you don't like as it is to understand what you do like. So in reference to how do I know what I want to do? I mean, I've been out of college for 10 years and I'm still trying to figure that out, and where do I want to go and what do I want to do? So when I ask that question of people in interviews, I think it's refreshing when people say, I don't know, but I'm open to specific things, like Courtney mentioned, being very flexible. I think it's important, and I think Kingston mentioned this earlier, to align with your values and understand what you're kind of working toward, even if that's just aspects of a job, right? I like to problem solve. I like to think on my feet. I'd like to talk with other people and be engaged, because yes, having a well-paying job is great, but if someone said, hey, you have to go live on a desert island for 20 years by yourself and you get paid tons of money, I don't know if I would want to do that, and some people may, some people might not, but it's important to recognize and understand yourself and do a little bit of soul searching to understand kind of what do you value in what you're doing every day. Because Jess mentioned this, you're going to be at work a lot. You have a lot less free time when you enter the working world than you did in college. So recognizing that you're going to spend a lot of time there, you're going to be doing a lot of different things, and trying to understand what it is you like about those things.
Great, thank you. And Sade, do you have another question you'd like to bring forward from the audience?
Yes. So we have one from Alice Dawes, and his question was, have any of the panelists started in a different field and worked in that field before transitioning to business? And how did you overcome the challenges from that transition, translating skills that may not apply to business, translating previous job titles to your future goal, etc.?
That's a big question. Who would like to try to tackle that? Jess?
This is gonna probably come into a question you're gonna ask me soon, but I did start in business, but I completely changed industries. So I started in banking with BB&T, and I was in a program with them and doing some personal banking stuff, and it was not for me. I think Sean mentioned this, like, your first couple jobs may be not great. And it's kind of just getting your foot in the door, networking with people. So much of it is about meeting people. Like, even if you're super introverted, like, make some effort. It could be harder, but it's so about knowing people and getting into that. So banking was not for me. It is for tons of people, but just not, my personality didn't jive super well with it, very black and white. I was on a adult kickball team and met a friend, and he worked for this like up and coming software company, and told me about it. And there was a role, inside sales role. And I was like, I'll do that. Like, get me out of banking. And so I just learned this entire new like software, and learned how to do sales for a software company. I mean, it was complete switch of careers. And because I met him on this softball team, I it's like where I am now today. It wasn't my current job, but it got me to this current job. And this current job is my lifestyle. They let me do working mom stuff. They give me a flexible schedule. I didn't have that with that very initial job. I learned this whole new world because I was like, this is going to get me where I want to be when I'm 35 years old. And so I went from banking to software to managing accounts. Like, so it's been everything. If you just this is so cliche, but if you put your mind to it, you're going to do it. Like, if you have like, I want this for my life, like you're going to make it happen. So talk to people, get to know what they're doing. Some of the other panelists have said, like, just go and like see what people love talking about themselves. And when you start doing that, like, it leads to these conversations that get your foot in the door of other places. So.
Great. So that is master networking at its best. So I'm going to piggyback off of that and ask Jabea, how did you find your first job?
It's actually what I spoke about earlier about the internship. So I was applying, it was about a couple months before graduation. I was applying everywhere, and I had networked with that mentor I spoke about. And then 2 weeks before graduation, she did email me about a paid internship. And that's how I got my first job. So just a background, I did international studies. So I was from TRAS. I'm not even from business. So in my mind, I had this plan. I'm going to be a UN ambassador. I'm going to take over the world, travel the world. And then I ended up, so my first job internship was to be basically an internship manager at RTI International, which has nothing to do with what I wanted to do, but it was awesome because I ended up working under the director of what do you call this, like their college connection division. So I got to interact with UNC students, NC State students, Duke students, and basically all the researchers and technical people all over the triangle. So I was networking the crap out of everybody. And so from that, I then moved from being an intern, and then I actually got a financial analyst role without having any experience in finance. I did take some business classes, but I became a financial analyst, and that again opened a lot of opportunities. And to what Sean and Jess was saying, like, I started to figure out what I don't want, what I did like. It did open travel opportunities for me, but I figured out that I don't like the work-life balance because there was none. And so then I networked the crap out of everything again. And then now I ended up in, now I'm in IT. So I work for Cisco as a business development manager, probably similar to what Jess is doing. And so from my first job, it has nothing to do with what I currently do now, but it does connect to my dream was to travel the world and have that ability to have a lot of time and be able to travel the world. And my current job allows me to do that. So I forgot what your question was. You said how I got.
How did you find your first job? And it sounds like you networked the crap out of it.
Yeah, I did network the crap. I
love that. I love that. I'm gonna say that now.
You just have to you just have to be really good at convincing people that you're able to do the work. You just got to be convincing somehow, and attitude and your attitude and just willingness goes a long way compared to someone who might have, the background they're looking for, but doesn't seem to have the drive and just the curiosity. So be curious.
I've heard a couple of themes so far. I've heard networking as a major theme. I've heard curiosity as a theme. And being open. So this is really good advice that you're all giving. Gabby, back to you. How do you build up your confidence to speak with an employer?
I think you kind of just have to remember at the end of the day, they're people too. And it can be intimidating, but the best advice I got from my internship from my mentor was that, especially coming right out of college, everyone's rooting for you. So these
That's
people,
nice.
when you're talking to employers, they want to impress you just as much as you're trying to impress them. Like, they want you to like them and their company just as much as you want them to like you and think you're good for the company. So I think at the end of the day, it's really just remembering that they've been there and they're people too.
I love that. Kingston, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just for me, if you are, like Jess said, one who's highly introverted and doesn't often feel comfortable talking to others, for me, I need to get like out of my head. Sometimes that helps. So I try to focus when I talk to others, especially when it comes to like recruiters or work related, is come from a place of service. So instead of so much focusing on like me and what I'm going to bring from that perspective, and then start doubting that, I try to think it's like, okay, well, when you try to help someone, when you try to be a service, it's not so much about like how good you are, it's more that you want to help. So if you frame it of that way, is, you know, how can I be of service? How can I help? Whether it's a recruiter or any place I'm applying for, it takes the focus off yourself and makes it easier to be confident.
Excellent. And so since networking is a major thing that we need to be doing, Sean, if someone that you don't know tries to connect with you on LinkedIn, how do you decide whether or not to accept it?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Generally speaking, if someone personalizes a message to me and says like, hey, Sean, I'd love to connect because I see you're involved in XYZ, or hey, Sean, I'd love to connect because you are also a business major, or I heard you speak in Marcy's class, or whatever it is, I'll probably accept with that person and message them back and, you know, offer up any sort of support. If someone I don't know just tries to connect with me randomly from without any sort of connection, I probably don't accept that. I'll usually accept if recruiters, because I think it's always good to kind of hear what people have to say and you know, keep your eye out. And then even if you're not interested in a role, maybe you can pass that person along to someone you may know is interested in a role. That's sort of my general rule of thumb. I think people are, especially now, very liberal with, you know, who they connect with and their network. But I think it's valuable to have people in your network that you know and that you trust. And so having that personalization, like if you were a student wanting to connect with someone in the professional world, just taking the extra 30 seconds to write a quick message as to why you're connecting would make me much more likely to connect with that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Courtney, do you have anything to add to that?
I think what Sean said is mainly what I would say. And then, you know, other than seeing a personal note or something like that, I would say the obvious. I either know them or I see that we have some connections. And so then therefore it's not a completely random thing, but I do think a personal note goes a long way.
Okay, great. And Sade, do you have a question from the audience that you'd like to bring forward?
Yes, so we have one from Dennis, and his question is, in you guys' opinion, are businesses expecting positions to be remote even after the pandemic?
Ooh, who would like to answer a pandemic question?
I can maybe answer that in part. My company is trying to figure that out as we speak. I mean, they're sending out surveys and they're just not sure, but they're trying to gauge people's interest for what, you know, it looks like for them moving forward, if they're wanting to work remotely more or not, because they've seen that in a lot of ways it does work. But yeah, that's what my company's just trying to figure it out. I don't think anyone really knows what they're doing yet.
So companies are open to it.
Mine definitely is, whereas before they weren't.
Mm-hmm. Are they finding a benefit?
Yeah.
I think our sales team.
No, go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, sorry, Sean. Our sales team had the best year. I mean, we're in e-commerce, so e-commerce, as you can imagine, is booming right now.
Yeah.
But you know, we've been remote since March of last year, and we my boss told me recently they have no plans in sending us back into the office in 2021, and they'll do surveys for 2022 because we're doing just fine. We're all we're a small company, but we all are working really hard and still having success. So I think it depends on people's work ethic, and companies are going to see that.
Cool. Sean?
Yeah, I think it largely depends on the leadership of the company and their sort of vision. The company I currently work for, we've been remote for, a year now. We started working remotely the first week in March of 2020, and I've been doing it the whole time. Prior to that, we had a pretty strong, like, in the office culture. I live in the Bay Area, and so there's a lot of companies that are very similar to that, where they really value the collaboration of being in an office. So my expectation is not that I'll go back to the office full time, 5 days a week. But I think once things loosen and things open up, it'll be much more flexible, where I'll be in the office 2 to 3 days a week and working from home 2 to 3 days a week. And it'll be sort of a flexible or hybrid model. I think that's just how I anticipate the company that I work for moving forward. But a lot of companies are saying, you don't have to be in an office. We're going to divest from our real estate and leases and just keep flexible office spaces and that sort of thing. So it sort of depends. And I think a lot of larger companies are probably going to lean more towards the remote, and maybe smaller companies might still want that in-office collaboration. So it just depends on where you fall in that spectrum.
Interesting. So related to pandemic, since the subject was brought up, Courtney, can you tell us any suggestions you might have for networking during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think one of my favorites has been just like a virtual coffee. Virtual happy hours are interesting because sometimes with a group, it's a little bit harder to fully connect on a Zoom or something like that. But I find that virtual coffees are honestly a little bit easier because it's not like you're having to go and drive somewhere or anything like that. And I think especially when people are more isolated, they're even more willing to take 30 minutes or an hour out of their day just to be able to talk and interact with someone.
Mm-hmm. And Sean, are you finding that to be the case, that it's pretty wide open for that possibility?
Yeah, I completely agree with Courtney. I mean, just having those virtual things, there's, previously in networking, a lot of it relied on you being in the same room and meeting people face to face and shaking hands and whatever it was. But now everything is remote. And so even if you live in a different state than you want to get a job in or whatever it is, it's much easier to meet with those people. I don't remember who said it earlier, but just dropping a line and saying, hey, can you reconnect for 30 minutes? So that's a much easier process now because everyone's so familiar with Zoom, everyone's so familiar with connecting online. Also thinking about like what you're interested in. So I want to work in this field, I want to do these things. There's probably webinars, companies are probably doing those sorts of things for potential customers, but it also might be valuable for students to say, hey, I really want to go work at this tech company. They're doing a webinar. I'm going to join it, right? So just keeping up with like those sorts of things that are happening. And I actually think there's a lot of benefit to the decentralization of everything and everyone being spread across and being remote. It allows you to probably network much easier and do it all virtually.
Great. Okay, and Sade, do you have another question from the audience?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
This question is from Caleb, and his question is, how did you guys know what to major in? He's in the college of management, but he has been struggling choosing what majors to fully dive into. So, and this is especially because you guys said most jobs are learned on the job anyway. So what did you guys want to major in? No, to major in.
I can answer for me, at least my undergrad major was exercise and sports science, and I absolutely don't use that now. So I think choosing a major can be really helpful, especially if you want to go into something technical. But I mean, for me, I had that major and then I went to law school and now I don't use it at all. So I'm not saying that your major is irrelevant, but I wouldn't worry that if you choose something and you're later not happy that you can't make a switch or do something that you find you're more passionate about and just didn't know, because there's so much out there you just might not know about.
So that's great, Courtney. I'm going to put you on the spot though, and I'm going to ask you from your undergraduate major, what are the transferable skills that you take away?
That's a good question. Maybe just the broad things that I touched on earlier about time management and critical thinking and things like that. And in my everyday life, I definitely use some of the more technical aspects I learned from my major, but like it's more just earlier about broad things. And I think I'm one of the few that actually went to Carolina undergrad. So it was a liberal arts school, and I did take a lot more, a broad variety of courses, whereas I'm not sure at NC State you have more gen eds at Carolina, which does make a difference, and you take a lot more different variety of classes.
Good. Okay, thank you. And Sade, do you have another question there? I see the question numbers are going up, so we're not getting to the end yet.
They are. So we have a question that says, and it's saying, have any of you guys been able to advance in your role or in your field? And if so, what has enabled you to advance in your career? Has it been high levels of performance, being efficient at work, or etc.? And then, is there any advice that you have for career advancement in general?
I can take this. When I was at Bronto, which that was my second job after banking, I started out as a inside sales rep, and I just got to really know the staff there and leadership there. They had this is kind of what Sean was talking to about, like companies really investing in their office environment, because at Bronto, we were in American Tobacco, which is in Durham. It's a really cool space. So we had these little happy hours. And I just used that to my advantage just before I had kids. So I actually had time to like go and talk to leadership and get to know everybody. And we were a smaller company. And when I knew this account management role was opening up, I just was like, I'm applying, and went directly to the hiring manager and was like, I'm ready. Like, I want to interview with you. And it was kind of bold, but like, what's there to lose, right? And then from there, I was in that role for a couple of years. I wanted to be team lead. And so I actually asked for it. And then from there, I really wanted to do project management. And I didn't get as far as that, but then I actually went and interviewed with a different company, had a job offer. This sounds really kind of manipulative, but I promise it's not. It's just the world we're in. And I presented it to Bronto, like, look, I had this job offer from Bandwidth. I'm going to take it. I'm like, no, we'll give you the project management role. So you kind of just have to, like, again, it's about just talking to people, getting to know people, especially within your company and the leadership there. You don't want to be like so selfish that you're just doing it for your own gain, but like, it is so important to build relationships within your company, outside your company. This whole world is about relationships, in my opinion. And that's how, like, I kept kind of moving up. And I knew when I had kids, I wanted a lifestyle. I wanted to work, but I wanted a flexible lifestyle. And that's where life has kind of taken me.
It's a pretty powerful experience that you just shared, and how she leveraged her social network at work to move up within her own company. So that's great. Anybody have anything they want to share on that?
I just want to piggyback off of what Jess said. You really have to advocate for yourself. So you can't just sit there and expect to move up without doing anything. You have to, the most important thing is you really have to let people know that you want to, because if nobody knows, then when a position comes up, they're not going to think of your name. So what I do at work is I just try to be, now that we're all remote and online, I just try to always be active on our chat groups. I always try to have one-on-ones with my managers, with coworkers, and making sure they know my goals, so that when that opportunity comes, they'll remember you and be like, oh yeah, she did mention she was interested in that. And previously I had mentioned to my boss that I wanted to be more technical, and that really worked because she'll remember what I said, and it got to a different conversation with another director, and it's just, again, networking the crap out of your network. So,
Awesome.
Yeah. And building on what they both have said, I think leveraging your network is really important, but you also have to, before doing that, or while doing that, really do a good job. You have to build a reputation for yourself as someone who not only does what is required of you, but also is doing other things to help other people out, right? So going above and beyond just what your normal job is, getting involved in other things, being seen as someone who, if leadership is what you want to do, is a leader already in what you're doing. So being seen as, whether it's a source of knowledge, a source of being helpful, working cross-functionally, whatever it might be, I think it's really important to build your kind of brand. So I'm Sean, what I'm good at is X, Y, and Z, right? And so if that's known across the organization, then like Jess was saying, it's going to be really easy to move, because hiring new people is expensive. To hire them, to train them, to ramp them, and to get them to the level where you're at is expensive. So keeping talent is like one of the most important objectives of leadership. And like Jabea mentioned, if you express interest and you're a talented or a good employee that goes above and beyond, people are going to do things to keep you, and go above and beyond to keep you and make sure that you're happy. So I think it's really important to, in addition to the networking piece internally, do a really good job at your work. I think it kind of goes without saying, but you're not going to get promoted, you're not going to grow your career if you're just kind of doing the bare minimum.
Okay, thank you. Sade, what else do you have there?
Okay, we have a question from Bryant, and his question was, how do you stand out to hiring managers with limited work experience?
So for a new, is this a new graduate? Yeah, okay, for a new graduate.
I can try and answer that. I guess I had a couple of thoughts. One, it depends when, right? So for me, in the interview resume process, it really helped to network on the front end. So then when I submitted my cover letter, I had like a reference of someone that worked at the company. So that kind of helps. Anytime you can know someone or get to know someone, you can reference it. It helps put your resume or cover letter to the top, which is always super helpful. And then you're in the interview process, it's super helpful just to one, be yourself, but if you can really carry a conversation and get to know the people that you're interviewing with. A lot of times, at least in my profession, what I heard consistently throughout an interview is, oh, are you someone I would like to grab a beer or grab a coffee with? Just because a lot of my work is learning on the job and that kind of thing. That's something that they really value and find important.
Awesome, thank you. Sade, you have another?
So this question is, how would not having an internship affect your ability to get a job after graduation? This person is going to be studying abroad, and this person is worried that he or she won't be able to get an internship because of that. So how would not having an internship affect your ability to get a job after graduation?
I can answer this. So they're studying abroad?
Yes.
Yes, they have plans to study abroad.
Then just use that experience. If you're studying abroad and you didn't have an internship, you can use whatever you learned during your study abroad to your advantage. I was in international relations, so we were required to study abroad, but beyond that, I always use, my travel experience and everything I've learned so that people can remember me. So just because you're not going on, you don't have an actual internship, it doesn't mean it's a disadvantage. If anything, studying abroad is a pretty amazing advantage because you're going, to a different country, you're going to be experiencing new things. I don't know where you're studying, but new language, it's a different kind of stress and adjustment that you need. So use all of that. It shows the employer that you're not afraid to try new things and be outside of your comfort zone.
Excellent. Okay, I am going to ask a question of the group because I already know that some of you will answer this as a negative. So I want to see if I'm going to ask it the other way. Did any of you stay in the career you expected to be in when you were an undergraduate? Anybody at all? I got head shaking.
I mean, I'm fresh out of college, so like, yes, but I've only been working 6 months, so.
Okay, so 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because I'm going to count myself in there too. I am not working where I thought where I started working. So I think the moral of the story is that most of us change quite a lot. So you're going to be co-creating your career throughout your career. It's not I'm going to study this and I'm going to be that. In very few cases that works out that way. Okay, one more question from the audience, Sade?
Okay, so we have a question from Taylor, and this person says, do you have any advice for building relationships among your coworkers and supervisors for purposes of networking as well as professional development / feedback?
I can touch on that since I started remotely, so that's how I've had to do kind of like the whole career. And honestly, everyone is willing to help. Like I kind of mentioned before, especially when you're fresh out of college, everyone wants to see you succeed in the company. And so just reaching out, like I'm a sales development rep, and so it's kind of like a program you have to go to kind of join and become an account executive. And so all other sales development reps that have been there for a year or so, I just reach out to and introduce myself and ask for, I think someone mentioned before, just like a 30-minute window. And from there, I've built so many friendships and different mentors and all of that. But like I said, everyone's willing to help, and especially everyone being remote, it's nice to have someone to kind of have like a normal conversation with.
Great, thank you.
And I think expanding on that,
yeah, go ahead.
Right. The normal conversation piece, I think, is one of the biggest things, because when you're networking, and Jess mentioned this and talking about those happy hours at Bronto and her kickball team and all this stuff, you're just connecting with people as people. And so it's not about like, hi, my name's Sean. These are my career goals. I'd like to do X, Y, and Z in this many years. And that's like probably aggressive and weird, but just being like, hey, I'm Sean. I'm interested in this. What do you like doing on your free time? Right. So connecting with people and as people, and seeing them as, as people, right? They're not like, this is going to be weird, but like they're maybe your parents' age, but now you work with them, right? And so it's about just connecting with them and not having that sort of mental barrier of like feeling weird or feeling awkward or feeling intimidated, because ultimately I have great connections with people I work with who are, 10 years younger than me and 20 years older than me. And so doing that and making sure that you're connecting on a personal level, I think, is the most important piece.
That's nice. I just want to point out, that there's been a couple of times it's been mentioned about the different generations in the workforce. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add about, there could be up to 4 generations in the workforce in some cases. Anything that you'd like to mention about that?
There's a couple of things in there. I think it's just really important because, like Sean mentioned, you're going to work with people in all different generations, and to have just a heart of empathy. And I think it's fun to kind of get to know things and like the younger generation, and the whole like it's all come out recently, like middle part and this emoji. And so like I have younger colleagues that I like now will just mess with them and send the crying emoji, even though they hate that emoji apparently. But it's a way to connect with them. But then I also have people that are 20 years older than me, and it's fun to like, I ask them like, and their parents, so I don't say things necessarily about our jobs. I'm like, hey, what's some parenting advice for me? Like, what did you do with your 5-year-old and 3-year-old and baby, just to balance stuff, and just asking them things that are relevant in their life. And just becomes this natural conversation. And I truly want to invest in these people because like they're my friends and my colleagues, and like we are successful together. So it's only for all of our benefit just to get to know each other even just as friends. And part of that is learning what they're working through right now in their lives. So it's really fun, honestly, to like learn other people in different age groups, what they're going through right now.
Absolutely. And, like I said earlier, I was always the youngest in the room until I wasn't. So we're all going through life, and we're all at different stages when we meet up with each other, but we're going to hit all those stages. So Jess, you're a mom, a working mother, and somebody else might not, have kids or be married or even be thinking about it right now. And then at some point, you're going to be an empty nester. And this is all part of life. So what can we learn from each other, and how can we bring what we're particularly good at to each other as well? I think it's hugely important. Okay, Sade, give us, I think you have one more question left.
Yeah, one final quick question, and this question is from Brian. He's asking, how many jobs did you guys apply for in your last year of college?
A ton. I had like 11 final interviews, I think, and that's final interviews, so I can't even tell you how many I had that I didn't make it that far, or didn't even get an interview. But I think it's so important to give yourself options, and like being able to have those different options to truly go into what you want to do, and not jumping on your first option you're given.
So do you have an idea of how many resumes you sent out?
I mean, probably over 20. I don't even remember now. That feels
Okay.
so.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good ratio.
Yeah, I sent out a ton of ones, but like I said, it's so important to have options.
So it's not uncommon to send out 50, 75, or even more resumes. I mean, you've got the world at your fingertips now, right? You don't have to actually like have it printed on resume paper, fold it in thirds, put it in an envelope, find an address. You know what I'm talking about, Nance or Jess? You know what I'm talking about? And put a stamp on it and send it. Now it's just like click of the button, boom. So go for it. Any other questions there, Sade?
Actually, one just came in,
Okay.
and this is from Brian. And this question says, when did you all obtain your first internship? And is there a best time to apply for internships?
I'm talking a lot, so if anyone wants to interrupt me, but I just will throw it at that. And this is actually going back to the study abroad question too. I didn't study abroad, and that's actually I don't like living with regrets, but if I would say if I have a regret, is that I did not study abroad in college. I waited tables a lot in low 5 points in Raleigh, and I worked an internship 2 summers in a row. And I honestly didn't use that internship to get my job. And so I'm not trying to discredit internships, because I think they're important. I did learn a lot in that internship. But if anything, I learned that I didn't want to go into that field that I did with that internship. So I just, I think there may be some, from the question, it sounds like earlier, like I wouldn't regret that you don't necessarily have an internship. I would say go study abroad, because there's so much experience in that. But for the internships, I did mine between my junior, senior, and sophomore and junior year. And it was good timing, but it was pretty boring. So I would try to find one that's like, a little more relevant for what you want to do.
Anybody else?
Yes,
Kingston?
yep, on what Jess said, and kind of this idea like that the internship is not like the end all be all. So like I did do an internship one summer, and then the next summer I kind of wasn't sure. So I do have a major in accounting, but then my minor is in cognitive science, which is philosophy and tech, which is completely different. And so the next summer when they like invited me back, was it like, do I want the internship, or do I want to explore this kind of like other curiosity stream that's come into my little brain? And I was like, I think I want to go study some code and like, AI ethics. And so I think it's kind of what you want to do. I think it goes to like looking at in your industry what's best, but then just doing whatever.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're almost at time. I just have one last question. I'd like to go around the panel to ask, and that is, what is your favorite Wolfpack tradition? So Gabby, let's start with you.
Mine probably would be after like a big sporting event, going and rushing the bell tower. I remember my freshman year, I think it was like 87 to 84, something like that in basketball. And I remember everyone just rushing the bell tower and then the team coming and everything. So it's probably my favorite.
Awesome. And Jabea, how about you?
I would say the same thing. Just seeing the bell tower red is one of my favorites.
Awesome. Jess?
I loved NC State. I loved all the sports, but I loved NC State baseball games because my now husband, he's my boyfriend at the time, him and all his guy friends had this like positive heckling of the other team, and they sat along the third baseline and did all this research. This is when Facebook was really new. Like Facebook was brand new when I was in college. And so they would go on Facebook and figure out things about the opposing team. And they would never say anything derogatory, never use cuss words, anything like that, but just get in their heads, like the pitchers' heads. And it was so funny that they got written up by like the sports page and just how awesome they were. So that's mine.
That sounds fun. Sean, how about you?
I think the funniest tradition or the coolest tradition would be the Krispy Kreme challenge. I just think like that's such an interesting and unique NC State specific thing. And, you know, everyone's gotten dressed up about it. It's something that I think is like a cool icebreaker that I talk about with people who don't know NC State, right? There's not a lot of people where I live that went to NC State or anything like that. So that's probably the coolest one or the most kind of fun one to talk about, I think.
Great. And Kingston, how about you?
I love food. So to repeat what Sean said, definitely the Krispy Kreme challenge. The first year I did not get to like actually eat like the dozen you're supposed to, and like most people don't, but I said like once before I graduated, I would do it where I just pounded those 12 and like kept going. So it's definitely a story.
Yeah, I'm thinking about whether or not I should do that. And Courtney, you would have a UNC tradition. We'll allow it. We'd like to hear it.
I can even do NC State. I
Okay.
spent a surprising amount of time at NC State because I'm from Raleigh, so plenty of my friends went there. I always loved going to the NC State football games just because I think the culture around the football games at NC State is a lot more. It's a lot different and in my opinion, a bit more fun than UNC's. It's not quite the same.
Right. Well, thank you. And thank you to all of the panelists. You did a great job. Really appreciate this and your flexibility in answering these questions. And Sade put in the chat that this is the last session, everyone. There's not a wrap up, but if you received a door prize, you will be notified by email. So thank you, Sade, for helping me out and manning that chat. Really appreciate it. And everybody have a great rest of your day. Thanks.